Hello, my name is Leah Wilson, Executive Director and co-founder of Stand for Health Freedom. And today we are here talking about an important project that we are doing in 2022, and that is Vote for Health Freedom. We receive messages daily, hourly from people reaching out saying, what can we do about what we see happening with mandates in our schools, mandates in our place of work, or even what can we do about the CDC's confusing policies? And friends, one of those things that you can do is get involved in the 2022 elections. Right now in Congress, we have very thin margins of control in both the US House and the US Senate. And what that means is that the Democratic control in the White House extends to the Senate and the House, and there's no checks and balances or incentive to have that accountability for bipartisan efforts in play. So we want to see seats flipped in 2022 on November 8th so that we can restore some of that accountability, restore some of the common sense that we have seen lacking, and some of that oversight of healthcare and individual liberty. And that's why I have with me today a special guest, Chip Roy, for U.S. Congress representing Texas's 21st District. So thank you so much, Chip, for joining me.
Leah, it's great to be with you. It's great that you've got this important organization that's focused on healthcare freedom for the American people. It's something that's critical. And we frankly don't have enough organization on that. There's not enough voices standing up for Americans versus the big corporate and government interests. So thank you for doing it, and glad to be with you.
It's an honor. Thank you. I want to tell each of you a little bit about Chip before we dive in to hear about his current race for Congress. And you will see that he does not have any shortage of qualifications to represent Texas's 21st District. He is an American attorney and politician currently serving Texas's 21st Congressional District. He took office on January 3rd, 2019, and before his election to Congress, he served as the Chief of Staff to Senator Ted Cruz and as the first Assistant Attorney General of Texas. Chip also served as Senior Advisor to former Texas Governor Rick Perry, Staff Director and Counsel to Senate Judiciary Committee John Cornyn, and was the Vice President of Strategy at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, and served as the Assistant Attorney General of Texas and Special Assistant U.S. Attorney in the Eastern District. He's also a committed husband and father and a true patriot with extensive experience in both the private and public sectors. So let's dive right in and talk about a statement that's front and center on your reelection campaign page. And it says that you have led the charge to defund government tyranny. So what was the catalyst for you on taking that hill to fight government tyranny?
Well, I have been blessed to work in and out of public service in the private sector both, and went to the University of Virginia. I grew up, I lived in a room that was built by Thomas Jefferson. I have a deep appreciation for the founding of this country, and I've been watching now. I turned 50 this month in August, and I've been watching so many efforts by the left, but frankly, a lot of folks even on the right and Republicans to undo all of those great principles that I think have made it possible for this country to prosper. And one of those core principles is obviously that we don't live under tyranny. Our bedrock founding structure, and the Declaration of Independence is dripping with it. And here we are today, and we are literally taxing the American people, taking their money. We are printing money and borrowing money, and we are funding the massive expansion of the bureaucratic, tyrannical state over the American people. And that extends into all areas of life, whether we're talking about funding a DHS that won't secure the border, whether we're funding an FBI that will target parents for daring to question the school boards that aren't teaching their children properly, or whether it's in the area of healthcare, whether we are sending money to the World Health Organization or the United Nations, or we're giving massive handouts to big pharmaceutical companies based on unproven science, and coordinating with big insurance companies to collude over the American people. This is not freedom. This is tyranny. So I've devoted my political career and my service in public life to combating that at every level where I've been able to serve.
When you were campaigning in 2018, Ted Cruz said, "I know how Chip responds under pressure, under heat, and he won't buckle." So how have these last 2 years really tested that notion of not buckling under pressure, and what have you done about it?
Well, I think there have been a large number of issues that we've been addressing in the now 3.5 years that I've served in the United States Congress. It's been a little tumultuous. There's been attacks if you dare to stand up for the people or stand alongside President Trump's America First agenda and trying to challenge the status quo and defend America. There's been attacks if you believe that the Constitution should be protected, and standing strong in that front, even when it maybe wasn't in line with the former president after January 6th. There's a lot of issues that pop up, and you have to decide whether you're going to stand up for what you believe in, articulate it. And that's what's missing in Washington. And look, I have no problem. I mean, I have colleagues who will say, well, I can't do that, take that position because, oh man, all those PBMs with all their money, they'll come out and run ads against me, right? Or oh, those big pharmaceutical companies will come out against me. Look, I took a position in a hearing defending pharmaceutical companies against the attacks by the radical left because they make a lot of money. I have no problem with pharmaceutical companies making a lot of money. In fact, I'm alive today as a cancer survivor because a pharmaceutical company came up with a great drug that would go in and target the cancer cells that were attacking my body. So God bless them. I hope they're rolling in money for it. And I said that in a hearing, and the left blew their mind. But what I don't like is when you have collusion and cronyism, where governments are just giving money to corporate America to tell you and me how to live, to tell you and me how we're going to get our care, to tell you and me that we have to take a shot, to tell you and me that we have to do something. That's wrong. You don't go give money to a big pharmaceutical company and then tell the entire world you must take a vaccine, and then, oh, by the way, give them liability protection for the pleasure. That's not freedom. That's tyranny. That's what I want to stand up against at whatever level I can.
And when you talk about the silencing of people that you know stand for similar values with health freedom, do you see that there is still hope in Congress? Is there still hope to continue this battle?
Yeah, well, there always is. I mean, people say, "Oh my gosh, we're so hopelessly divided." Well, I mean, we haven't, at least lately, had the Secretary of Treasury and Vice President dueling on the street, right? That did happen in our history, but it happened over 200 years ago. Obviously, we were very divided in the 1860s. We've been divided multiple times in our country. Now's the time for us to remember who we are as Americans, band together. And it doesn't take an overwhelming majority to shift the narrative and to shift the trajectory of the country. There's a great quote by Sam Adams, one of our founding patriots, that it doesn't take a majority, it takes a tireless minority willing to set brush fires of freedom. And so my job is to go out and explain to my colleagues, the American people, the people I represent in Texas 21, why I'm doing what I'm doing, and to stand up and build a coalition to get it done. And that's what I try to do every single day. And I think everybody should retain hope. But there's a key aspect to that. You, the American people, and your organization is one of the important forces in this conversation. The American people have to voice what they want. It is the greatest freedom we've got to have a say in our government, and to be able to say that we can protect those precious freedoms and how we want to live our lives. So engage and do that. Pick the right candidates, get behind the right candidates. More importantly, talk at church, talk at the dining room table, talk in those, community groups, talk in, when you're with your friends and they go, oh, well, we don't want to talk about politics. Well, politics connects every aspect of our life. Who's on the school board matters for your kids. Who's running the counties and the local governments are going to tell you how much you're paying for your roads and whether you have roads or whether you have cops on your streets. I'm looking at you, Austin, Texas. Like, these are the things that we have to engage in, and not just go bury our head in the sand and go, ooh, we can't talk about that. And that's especially true, by the way, in churches, but that's another conversation for another day.
Yes, that vigilance and the empowerment to be vocal, we have seen make a huge difference over the last couple of years. We've had a lot of wins. There's been a lot of light shine in dark places, even though the pressure has been extremely high. You wrote a letter to the CDC director, Rochelle Walensky, calling out her blatant hypocrisy and politically motivated falsehoods. And you were responding to her flipping her position on masks and the intentional withholding of vaccine and hospitalization data. Did you get a response to that letter? Did anything ever come of that?
I don't believe so. I would want to defer to my staff more than we got something. The reason I say that is when you're in the minority, you're left with giving speeches on the floor, voting no on bad bills, and writing letters to the administration saying, why are you doing what you're doing? So we've written a number of letters on the healthcare front. And so I never want to say anything that's not true. Maybe she responded, maybe she didn't. What I can say with certainty is that I haven't gotten a response that was meaningful. And this is true on multiple issues. The fact is, the CDC, I mean, actually almost by their own admission now, right? I mean, with last week, coming out basically saying, oops, sorry, we could have done it a little better. Saying, well, that's the understatement of the year. When we shut down the largest economy in the history of mankind, we forced our children into the corners of classrooms or not even in classrooms. We made them wear masks. We forced 1 million people out of the school system who had previously been registered. Then suddenly, where are they? We've caused all sorts of mental health issues. We did all of this with all of this arrogance by a government bureaucratic state, frankly, colluding with the corporate world. We then would shame people who dared question it, right? If you're an American citizen and you want your child to go to school to not be masked because you've read the science, or maybe you say something like, I take vitamin D, but the CDC won't even put something out there about, hey, vitamin D might actually be good for this. Lo and behold, last week, a study comes out saying, hey, I got something. Vitamin D is good for combating COVID. Well, no crap. Like 20 months ago, we knew that and we were trying to put it out there. But the CDC and the powers that be and the collusion with big tech, by the way, and don't pretend there's not a collusion with big tech. When big tech is shutting down your ability to put out thoughts on Twitter or on Facebook or wherever you might be. And even just last week on a different issue, we saw that Zuckerberg admitted, yeah, we were working with the FBI about not putting some stuff out about Hunter's laptop. Okay, that's not what we're here to talk about, but I am here to talk about the fact you and I and freedom-loving Americans couldn't put out the truth of what we believe was occurring to our kids, to our well-being, mandatory vaccines, making you wear masks. And we were fighting it every which way we could. And to your point about the CDC director, where was she, right? She was leading the charge. She was going on all the talk shows along with, Fauci and the whole band. And they were out there trumpeting, oh, we know best. And here's what you need, live in fear. And they wouldn't respond when we would be asking reasonable questions. So I'm going to keep calling her out. I'm going to keep calling out Fauci. I'm going to keep raising issues with all of the bureaucrats that have been doing this to the American people.
I think a lot of people are concerned that the trust in the CDC, NIH, HHS is beyond repair at this point. And it's an interesting topic because, we could also take this juncture to begin to highlight the importance of people being the arbiter of their own truth and to empower parents to take back the driver's seat when it comes to their family's health. So we appreciate you writing those letters and holding people accountable, holding their feet to the fire when it comes to America's health and our abilities to make choices for our families. So it's clear that you value individual sovereignty, that you value state sovereignty, American sovereignty, and you evidence that in Thanksgiving of 2020 when you said, we're not going to honor any of these CDC Thanksgiving guidelines, and instead we will intentionally violate them. But thanks, I will do whatever I want to do on Thanksgiving, period. Stand up for America. So why did you feel like that was a stand worth taking? What does this mean for Texas or for the American people?
Well, you'll remember at the time that this was November of 20. We were still living, way, way, way beyond, 2 months to flatten the curve. Now at that point, 9 months beyond that. And let's back that up for 1 second. In March of 2020, as this stuff was all unfolding and we're all shut down and we're all basically at our homes, basically being forced to quarantine. We're shutting down small businesses. Their livelihoods depend on foot traffic. I'm on the phone with every small businessman and woman that I can get a hold of, trying to figure out how can I help them? How can I help get people to stay alive through this, their businesses and their livelihoods? Meanwhile, we're going through all of that. And I put out an op-ed saying, hey, we need to open this country back up. I wrote that op-ed in March, saying we need a date certain, and I suggested by Easter, by early April, that we need to be fully open again. I also put out statements saying, let's protect the elderly and the infirm. Let's focus on those that need that focus, and then let's open stuff back up. We've got to get back and re-engage. Then we spent however many months right through that summer, I can't remember the exact timeline, and it's all about the mask and the forced masking and masking on airplanes and masking and on the floor of the House, they were trying to force us to wear masks and so forth. And you'll remember heading into that Thanksgiving, Fauci and Walensky and Birx and all the powers that be were all saying, oh, you got to wear masks and you got to stay separated and you can't join for Thanksgiving. And that's absolute garbage. It was garbage then. It's garbage now. And I wanted to make that very clear and take a position. And my dad is a polio survivor. He's 79 years old. He'll be 80, Lord willing, in November. And I've watched what happens when illnesses hurt people. And he's been handicapped since he was a 7-year-old kid when he had that dreaded disease. We're blessed to have that vaccine be able to help kids not transmit and get polio. I would note that the current shot does none of those things. None of those things. You can still transmit it. You can still get it, as evidenced by all of our overlords who have been 4 times vaccinated and keep getting the daggum thing. But let's put that aside for a minute. That Thanksgiving, I thought it was important to say, I'm going to get together with my family because I'm a free American. And I want to see my then, I think, 77-year-old father, 78-year-old father, and be able to visit with him and my mom. And we'll do so sensibly and we'll do so intelligently. But no, we're not going to live in fear. And I think that's the biggest thing. If I had one big complaint about all of this, and I've got many, is that the United States government told the American people to live in fear, to shut down, and to go quarantine in their homes. Think about that. The American people, we decide how we live, and the federal government does not. And we've got to reset that balance of power. And that's our calling as a generation.
Mm. And people were lacking the information on how to build resilience, how to build immune systems that can adapt to anything that
Amen.
we encounter, regardless of the named virus or named threat during that time. Is, our children, our grandparents, they encounter millions, trillions of viruses on a daily basis. And so that was, Joseph Ladapo, who is Governor Ron DeSantis's chief medical officer, he just mentioned a few weeks ago in an interview that it's astounding, it's maddening that anything to build our health was completely left out of the conversation coming from the top over the last 2.5 years. So I think it's important that we recognize that we're only getting a piece of the story and that it's time to share our values and unapologetically share information with each other as we navigate emergencies, as we navigate the 2022 elections, especially.
Let me just add one thing there, because it's really important that what you just said about building up our immune systems. I mean, again, you've got the health overlords who are telling everybody to lock down and to shut down, and in the process, you're making us worse off, right? They were not doing the things that you would normally say we should do. We should be outside, not sharing air closed in. We should be engaged. We should be getting vitamin D. We should be taking vitamin D. And then we should be building our immune system, not stupidly, not recklessly, when you have a virus you're still trying to figure out. But again, how did I do that? My wife, my 2 kids, my kids were then, I think, 11 and 9. We were outside. We were out and about. We went out and engaged. I went and met with thousands of people across the district throughout that entire time. I shook hands. I met with cops. I walked, went all over the place. If I saw an elderly person, did I give them a little distance? Yeah. Did I go bolting into a nursing home and just start hugging everybody? No. But at the end of the day, you continue to live your life and you build that immune system. My kids have, Lord willing, knock on wood, anything can happen, have been very healthy through all of that. I know other families who box their kids up, and those kids have been dealing with a less robust immune system. It's just common sense. And we threw all of that common sense out the window. And I think that's the biggest thing that I think that we're lacking as a country right now in our leadership is common sense.
Yes. And Stand for Health Freedom, kind of switching subjects here to one of your bills, and I'd like to talk about other bills that you have filed also in Congress. But we ran a very successful campaign this year based on HR 419 to defund the World Health Organization. And we based that on the fact that the amendments that were being offered at that point in time to a treaty would trigger an expansion of legal power to the CDC to detain and examine Americans based solely on the unelected World Health Organization leaders, on their determinations. So through our campaign, our advocates sent over 137,000 emails to their specific congressmen asking them to support HR 419. And we saw during that time frame where those emails were being sent, 46 congressmen added their names to your bill. So that was exciting to watch. Why did you write HR 419 to defund the WHO? What was the catalyst for writing that bill?
Yeah, well, remember, I mean, first of all, I introduced that bill at the very beginning of this Congress because it was very clear to me, long before that specific event that you just properly highlighted and outlined, and that the folks responded and sent emails and made phone calls to the Hill, which are, by the way, grateful, and please keep doing that. I mean, anybody out there listening to this, it makes a difference. As you just noted, we suddenly got another several dozen people to sign on to the bill because you all highlighted it. But in January of that year, I was talking to my staff on this issue and just saying, why on earth are we continuing to prop up, frankly, most or any of these, international organizations that were neck deep in causing the continued abuse of power with respect to COVID and the shutting down of the economies and destroying of the supply chains and so forth, and not importantly, holding China accountable. But the WHO was particularly pernicious in this, right? And I think that's part of the thing that I think people don't really fully recognize. And I felt it was important, again, long before the event you mentioned, to highlight that. At the time you had the Director General of the World Health Organization, what's his name, Tedros, right? Mm-hmm. And that dude is basically under the thumb of the Communist Party of China, and he's repeatedly praised China for their handling of all things related to COVID, and at the same time that the Chinese Communist Party was hiding information about the origins of the virus that could have helped us as a world figure out what to do about it. This guy's saying, "Oh, China's great," and the World Health Organization is neck deep in all of this. So why should we give them any money and allow them to continue to operate against our interests as Americans, against our interests as freedom-loving people? They ignored the key signs of the pandemic early, and they're frankly a big part of the reason why we're in this situation. In fact, it was in January of 20 that they tweeted, quote, I'm going to pull this one up because I can't remember the exact wording. Preliminary investigations conducted by Chinese authorities have found no clear evidence of human-to-human transmission of the novel coronavirus, end quote, January 14th, 2020. That was over a week after the United States had issued a travel notice. Remember when President Trump was being criticized for daring to say, "Hey, whoa, maybe let's slow down travel," and that's where the WHO was. And it wasn't until January 23rd when the WHO finally recognized human-to-human spread. Now we're well into it. And then when January 30th, when the WHO declared COVID a public health emergency. So they were way lagging behind. So what purpose can a WHO serve if they're not out there helping be able to advance knowledge so we can respond to it early and effectively and perhaps have stopped this spread around the world?
Some of your colleagues in Congress, even in your same party, Republican congressmen, responded to our advocates with an unwillingness to commit to supporting HR 419 and citing the reason that it's very important that America stay active in these international relations and that it's important for us to have a seat at the table. So what would you say to those colleagues that are hesitant to take a firm stand on the issue?
Grow a spine and stop spouting off ridiculous talking points, and instead actually answer the question. When you say something like, the United States can't retreat from engagement on the international scene to ensure that we protect health for everybody around the world. Well, no kidding. Profile and courage there. How about instead you say, we're going to engage on the international scene, but we're going to engage on our terms. We're going to engage in the best interest of the American people. We're going to engage to seek truth. And we're not going to do that with an organization that has proven itself to hide the truth, proven itself to be incompetent or frankly actually dangerous, maybe even intentionally, because of their connections to the Communist Party of China and their unwillingness to stand up for the truth. Don't blindly say, well, we're going to continue to engage and work with, and basically, you know what that means? That's code for we're going to keep giving them hundreds of millions of dollars. That's what that means. By the way, we're $30.5 trillion in debt, and we keep writing checks that we don't have the money for. One of the checks that we write is to the World Health Organization, the same organization that has undermined your health, undermined my health, undermined the national security of the United States, the United Nations, or dozens of these organizations that we need to take a look at. I'm not saying withdraw. I'm saying stop doing the same stupid crud we've been doing. And that's the answer. Man, I can't tell you how many times my colleagues will say, well, we can't do that, Chip. We've got to stay engaged with fill in the blank organization. It's like, why? I mean, the organization didn't used to exist at one point, and somehow we survived. So why don't we start with what's best for America and then work outward?
We see this issue as extremely important. You know, we see the sovereignty issue starting at the family level and then even at the state level, which I've seen you make statements too that show that you understand the federal government has a role and then the state should be left to themselves because they have their own role, this decentralized form of governance. So what would you say to the average American? Like, why should they care that the US maintains our sovereignty? Why should they care that our states maintain their sovereignty? How do we put that in simple enough terms to say, we're fighting for something very important to you in the future generations?
Look, I would try to make this in the simplest possible terms. Throughout the last 2.5 years, we've had a direct, clear example of what happens when you rely on unaccountable bureaucrats and or politicians, even if elected, who are at arm's length and far away from you. The people most accountable to you are the people you can get hold of and that are closest to you, share your values, and have the interest of your community at heart. That was actually the genius of our founding system. We separated powers horizontally across the Congress, president, courts. We separated powers vertically from the power in Washington to the states, local government. We want most of the decisions to be being made in the local level and in a combination with your state, right? And then that takes care of most of our problems, because all that should leave on the table is how do we interact together and how do we have a real strong, robust economy and a strong national security and defense. We shouldn't be doing all these other things at the federal level. It's actually ripping us apart. Instead of uniting in our differences as Americans and saying, look, I don't care if you're bat crud crazy in California, go be in California and go be crazy. But don't come impact and bring your crazy into my house in Texas. I'm happy to work with you in California and figure out how we defend our country. I'm happy to work with you in California about how we exchange goods and services. But when you say you want to get rid of the internal combustion engine by 2030, and I say, sorry, no, I don't think we want to do that, because we want to actually live in the real world so that people can have jobs and prosperity, not be like Germany, then we need to focus on the ability to have sovereignty with respect to defense of our communities. That's true on the world scale. I mean, it's on steroids in the world scale, because you have very different ways of thoughts and cultures and interests and powers and corruption around the world that we don't have here. I have no interest in having anything that the Communist Party of China believes have any impact on my life or the life of my kids and my family. So that's why sovereignty matters. That's why the distribution of power matters. And that's why we try to fight for that, not only in the United States, but around the world. We should not be ceding authority over our lives as freedom-loving Americans who are given our rights by God. We don't give that power to, we don't even give that power to our governor, much less our president, or certainly any foreign leaders or organizations. We live free. All of that power comes from us, the people, we the people. You know, the main thrust of the Declaration of Independence, right? Deriving their powers from the consent of the governed, right? Think about that. That was what the central thesis was in how you structure government with the Declaration of Independence. And they laid out a whole long train of abuses against that notion, right? But when those long train of abuses exist, you say enough, and you set up a government, and you set that government up through the consent of the governed. That's why it matters.
So what can the people that are listening do about sovereignty, and what can be done by the average person to protect our sovereignty as citizens?
It's pretty simple. You got to stand up. You gotta be counted. you have to show up at the school board and say, this is how I expect my child to be educated. You have to be like Scott Smith, whose daughter was assaulted in a bathroom in Loudoun County, Virginia. You go to the school board, risk being what happened. He got arrested because it wasn't even really disrupting the meeting. He was just simply saying, hey, how about you protect my daughter? You got to go show up there. You got to go show up to your local county. And look, I'm not just going to just hand out traditional conservative talking points here. What if you're like I am, a conservative, believes in reasonable development and property rights, but you don't want to see the hill country dotted with houses and destroy the beautiful hill country? Go engage with your county commissioners to say, how are we going to develop and build and have houses that are affordable, but still preserve some of this beautiful landscape that God gave us? Engage, go do it. Don't just sit back and go, oh, well, I guess the developers are going to be in the hip pocket of local commissioners. And then you go and you have your beer and you move on. Don't do that. Don't walk away from your responsibility and duty to go preserve and protect the community that you inherited. Like, we actually have a duty, every one of us, not just me serving in Congress, frankly, more so, every single American citizen has a duty to go stand up and defend the republic that our fathers, grandfathers, and all of our forebears fought to defend. We all walk around all warm and fuzzy and say, oh, June 6th, oh, our granddad stormed at Normandy. Bullets flying at him. That's awesome. Okay. You don't have to serve in the military to go honor that commitment, right? You don't have to go put on the uniform necessarily. I certainly, love and respect all of you who do and have done so, but go engage and don't walk away. Don't cede the playing field. That's the answer. Stand up. And when your life is under assault, don't just don't shrug your shoulders. Don't just kind of go, oh, well, I don't want to say that. That might offend somebody. Like, stand up for what you believe in. I believe that there is man and woman. I have no problem saying that because it's true, right? I believe in sovereignty. I believe we should have a secure border where we decide who comes across the southern border of the United States, period. That's not racist. Don't let them say that you're racist for that. Go talk to the brown people in South Texas who want a secure border too. It's absurd. And on healthcare, don't accept walking into a room that some, insurance company gets to tell you what your healthcare is. An insurance company is not a healthcare company, right? Walk in and say, I want the best doctor I can get. Where is she? Where is he? Go get the doctor. And don't allow the insurance company to hold the cards. That's what a free society looks like.
And one of those duties, friends, is simply put, showing up on November 8th to vote. And we can't state the importance enough that we continue to engage in the elections. No matter what's been said about the quality of the election process or what we believe around the election process, it is our job to show up and fulfill that duty. So tell us a little bit about, even though I believe everyone listening and everyone that can hear us right now should be supporting men and women like you for Congress, because each and every seat matters this election. And if we have people like Chip Roy who are willing to go to bat for America, for Texas, and for the fabric of our nation, then we found someone that we can contribute to and support however they need. So tell us a little bit about your district. Where are you? Who can vote for you? And how can our listeners support your race?
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, I'm blessed to represent the Central Texas of Hill Country, the Hill Country, I'm sorry, in Central Texas. I currently represent downtown Austin to North San Antonio and kind of throughout the central part. But in the next election, so with redistricting, I will no longer be representing downtown and South Austin. I will have the southwest corner of Travis County around Austin, all of Hayes, all of Comal, all of Blanco, Kerr, Gillespie, Bandera, Real, out by Lakey and the Frio River, and then a big chunk of Bexar County, North San Antonio. So it's that whole region, and New Braunfels, Fredericksburg, Kerrville, and it's a great part of the state. Lukenbach, a lot of live music, a lot of barbecue, a lot of distilleries these days and wineries. But it's a blessing to represent Texas in any way, the entire state of Texas. My family comes from all over. But Central Texas is a particularly wonderful spot. And we had a tough election last time. Wendy Davis, some people will remember who Wendy Davis is, famous for her filibuster on the floor of the Texas Senate. And we had an almost $30 million race. It was the third most expensive race in the country. They thought they could take us out. We ended up beating her by 7 percentage points, which was a lot in that year. And we're just, keeping our head down. We're going to march forward. And if you're out there, we need your vote. We need your support. We need your money. Whatever you can do, engage, knock doors, make phone calls, spread the word. And if you're not in my district, do it for the folks running in those districts throughout Texas or anywhere in the country. It's really important to show up. And one final point here on that. I get frustrated at my fellow Republicans when they don't fight the way I would. But look, at the end of the day, you got to decide on election day. Like, who am I going to go get behind who represents my values better than the other person? And go get behind that person and then hold that person accountable. If you don't like it, fix it in the primary. That's how our system works. You don't stay home. You don't shrug your shoulders. You don't protest vote against somebody because, oh, well, that guy or gal didn't do everything I wanted them to do. Well, let them know on November 9th your frustration with what they're doing or not doing. But make sure you're getting somebody in that needs to be in there to fight for our freedoms. Like, let's take, for example, the governor's race in Texas. We must have Governor Abbott over Beto O'Rourke. That can't even be a question. We need to win by overwhelming double digits. And there's polls that show it in the single digits. That's not true in Texas. So show up and go beat the doors down and knock doors and get people to show up. That's a simple question in November in this election in Texas.
Yeah, so I want to encourage you all. You can go to chiproy.com to hear even more about his policy positions. We only covered health freedom today because our listeners, many of them are single issue voters who have said, we know if we can secure health freedom, that pretty much all else follows for the fabric of our families and for our democracy as it relates to religious freedom, our First Amendment rights, sovereignty, parental rights, and all those things fall under the umbrella of health freedom and our constitutional and God-given rights that we are born with that are not even given by man. So chiproy.com to hear more about his policy positions, support his race, and remember to do your duty in November and show up to vote. Friends, you can download your Vote for Health Freedom guide for your state by texting VHF to 52886. And there you will see that Stand for Health Freedom endorses Chip Roy for U.S. Congress, Texas 21st District. Thanks so much, Chip. It was a pleasure.
Leah, thank you. God bless y'all.